So if you taught yourself how to meditate, you might have gone down some wrong paths. When I was a teenager, I started to meditate, and I didn't really have much instruction. Luckily, I had a few good books. Luckily, I ran into some good books. But in the lamrim, what Venerable wants us to talk about, they talk about how to structure a meditation session. And I think that is just so fantastic that they've taught us what we should be doing. So the two things she talked about going through, we'll see how far we get. The first one is the types of meditation, and the second one is meditation on the lamrim. So this is starting on page 131. And so I'll read parts of it and just, she writes so well, it might make sense, but if you just read, everybody falls asleep. So her writing is so clear. But maybe there's something to say. So I'll read parts of it and see. Our happiness and suffering is directly related to the objects our mind focuses on and our thoughts and interpretation of them. A mind habituated to focusing on our own or others' faults, exaggerating them, and angrily complaining about them is an unhappy mind. I think everybody knows this one. A mind steeped in seeing others' kindness, appreciating it, and wishing them happiness is a peaceful mind. So maybe you experienced that as we did this sadhana, because we spent a long time on every part, giving ourselves full opportunity to try to let these virtuous thoughts enter into our mind, and, resistance comes up or you don't understand it or whatever, but if you can let this seep in, then all these virtuous ideas can make the mind very happy. So maybe you notice when we got done with the Buddha's mantra, what your mind, the texture of your mind was like. Probably pretty different from when we first sat down. Mental purification is needed to release destructive mental habits and cultivate beneficial ones. So we have to purify our mind. Transformation occurs through familiarizing ourselves with wholesome objects and beneficial perspectives, which is what we just did. The Buddhas are very wholesome objects, and the thoughts, the four immeasurables, all these different parts of the sadhana are the perspectives of reality, I would say, rather than what she's talking about earlier, where we exaggerate people's faults. And an angry mind is a mind that's not seeing reality because it's projecting things and exaggerating things. So familiarization occurs both in formal meditation sessions and in the time between sessions as we go about our daily lives. And now that we're on retreat, that's very important what we do in between the sessions. It will completely influence what your sessions are like. So you're in one big flow. You have the in-session time and the between-session times. That's what retreat is. It's one big flow. So because our unsatisfactory experiences in cyclic existence have no break, neither should our efforts to transform our mind and free it from afflictions. Thus, we have a schedule. And we try to stick to it as best as we can, because then we use our time really well. Venerable says this all the time. There's no break in samsara. So we have to make effort all the time. As long as we're under the influence of ignorance and karma, it's necessary to make continuous effort on the path and to discipline and transform our mind in both meditation sessions and break times. So we never know what karma is going to ripen. If you keep your mind virtuous, it's more likely that your negative karma can't ripen, but it still can. So you want to train the mind for karma to ripen, it needs certain conditions. It needs conditions. It's not just set in stone of when it's going to ripen. So having a virtuous mind is creating conditions for your virtuous karma to ripen. And having a non-virtuous mind is creating conditions for your unwholesome karma to ripen. So our time in sessions and out of sessions is trying to keep transforming and creating this virtuous mind. And then as we do this throughout the day, and we fortify this when we're on retreat, we make these efforts and bring them into our daily life, then we have more of a chance of when we die to have a virtuous mind and propel a good rebirth. So now she gets into the types of meditation. There are several ways of speaking about the various types of meditation. One way is in terms of stabilizing and analytical meditation. Stabilizing meditation channels the energy of the mind and generates single-pointedness. It enables the mind to remain on a virtuous object, such as the Buddha, or a neutral object, such as the breath, for as long as we wish, without distraction or laxity, and it enhances our concentration. So that's a very powerful mind to start to have a stabilized, concentrated mind. We need that powerful mind. Channels our energy of the mind. Makes it single-pointed, so it's not all dispersed all over the place. Concentration brings many benefits. It enables us to investigate objects such as impermanence and emptiness intensely, and to familiarize ourselves with virtuous emotions such as love and compassion without distraction. So, notice that she mentioned a virtuous object or a neutral object. So there's an object in meditation. It's not blank-minded. And actually, when I go to the prison outside of Spokane, and sometimes, once in a while, somebody from the Wicca group will come. And people in prison have a lot of time. And they don't often have proper instruction. So this man in the Wicca group was doing a lot of meditation, but he was doing kind of like he had no object. It was kind of like a blank-minded thing, and he was actually starting to lose his memory a little bit. And I gave him advice about having an object and kind of explained this to him, and then I came back and talked to Venerable about it, and she said, yeah, that's, you're like habituating your mind to like a fog almost, So it's one thing to realize in Buddhist meditation, there's an object. It's not just blank. You're not just checking out. As a friend of ours would say, Venerable says, holy cow, right? But cows maybe aren't so holy. But what I remember is, because I taught myself how to meditate, is that when I first started getting formal meditation, Dhammakusho's uncle wrote this book. Daishin Rinpoche wrote this book, and it talked about these, it really scared me actually, because I had been meditating for some decades, and I'd use books. But they told the story of like the prairie dogs that we have out here, and they sit up on the mountainsides, and they're kind of like this. They said, without proper instruction and meditation, you might end up like one of those prairie dogs. For some reason, that just like, that was a really good book for me to read. It really impacted me strongly. A few things in that book. That was one of them. It was like, yeah, it's probably a good idea to have proper instruction. But anyway, that's a Tibetan story, I guess. So objectless meditation is not usually the way we teach it. Let's see. Okay. And then there's two kinds of meditation: stabilizing meditation. The other was analytical meditation. And this enables us to penetrate and understand an object. Meditation on emptiness cannot be done unless we understand what emptiness is and can identify it correctly. Reasoning is necessary before we can progress to direct non-conceptual perception. Let me just read this a little bit and see. Analytical meditation is also used with other lamrim topics, such as precious human life, or eventual death, the various death meditations, the qualities of three jewels, and so forth. Here we contemplate the various points the Buddha and great masters have employed to explain these topics, and reflecting on the points one by one can bring deep transformative understanding. So sometimes Tibetan Buddhism, and especially in our tradition, we use a lot of analytical meditation. And sometimes people think it's like thinking, but it's, it might, when you think about how you learn about the Dharma, there is listening, contemplating, and meditating. At our level, we're actually doing a lot of contemplation when we are in the meditation hall, because you actually have to have certain qualities developed in your mind to actually meditate on these topics. So that's where we're at. We're trying to get to the meaning of these things. And once we have maybe like serenity, this stabilizing meditation, then we can combine that with developing our insight and, kind of take this to a different level. You have to have certain qualities with the mind to actually meditate and what they mean on these topics. So mostly we're doing contemplation, but still this is very moving to us as the lamrim topics that we meditate. It's not dry at all. You're trying to understand the meaning of the teachings, right? And then you're trying to apply them to your life and look into your experience and see, like we were talking recently about pride. Yeah, I gave a BBC on pride. And I was thinking when I moved here, I hadn't recognized that very well. And when I first started learning about it, it was like kind of like doing a book report at first. I was like looking at all these books. I was thinking about when I was a teenager, we used to say, "You're so conceited." And I was just finding the words and trying to find these words in my experience. For me, that's always something I have to do, is like, there's these words and then there's my experience and how do they relate to each other? Like, what does this word mean? What is my experience of this? Because words are just words to me, and they don't actually land. They don't mean much to me right off the bat. I have to look into them. And this is what we do, in a sense, when we analyze things. We're trying to understand what what the teachings are about, and then what's the meaning of them, and then look in our experience with these things. So, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So both stabilizing and analytical meditation can be done in one meditation session. For example, when we reflect on the qualities of our precious human life with analytical meditation, so our precious human life is this life that all of us in this room probably have. We have certain conditions in place so that we can practice the Dharma, essentially. When we automatically feel extremely fortunate, like a beggar who has found a jewel. So when you look at all the causes and all the various conditions of a precious human life, and you look at your own life, and you see, wow, I do have this, I have this, I have this. And and one thing that came up for me once is like, having back pain doesn't take you out. You still have a precious human life. Having knee surgery doesn't negate your precious human life. Having all these problems we have that we carry with us from day to day doesn't negate our precious human life. We have these various conditions. And when you understand that deeply, my teacher Dhammakusho says, you can never have depression. When you take to mind and when you take to heart, when you do the analytical meditation and it sinks into your precious human life, you can't have despondency in the mind. It's impossible. And I believe her on that, even though I haven't realized it. I mean, I still have despondency come up and, things like that. But I believe her on that, because anytime you really let these things penetrate your mind, there's no room in the mind for some of these other mental states. So when you do this meditation and you generate that appreciation and that experience, then that's the analytical part, right? Then you stabilize your mind. You concentrate, what she says here, we then concentrate on that feeling with stabilizing meditation to integrate the experience with our mind, which is what the sadhana is like. The sadhana is this great play, this great drama of these great verses of, bringing out these virtuous things, and then we try to make them make our mind into that. Let's see. So regarding the precious human life, this enables us to remember the preciousness of our life in the break times and influences the choices we make in life. Similarly, analytical meditation is employed to refute inherent existence and leads to a correct understanding of emptiness. We then focus on this absence of inherent existence with stabilizing meditation to accustom our mind to it. Okay, I'll let you know about emptiness when I get there. We'll stick with precious human life for now. And whatever else. Another way of discussing meditation is meditation. Yeah, so that he just explained one way to break up meditation is destabilizing and analytical. Now, this is another way to talk about meditation. Another way, and His Holiness talks about this a lot, of course he wrote this book, right? Is meditation on an object and meditation to transform our subjective experience. So in meditation on an object, we work to apprehend a particular object, like impermanence or emptiness. It's something that we haven't apprehended before, and we're trying to understand that. Investigating that object with wisdom, we cultivate a correct ascertainment of it, and then we familiarize ourselves with that. The mind meditating on impermanence first focuses on a particular thing, such as the body, and then develops an understanding of its attribute of impermanence. So if you're looking at the body, there's a lot of things you could look at. You could do the foulness meditation. You could do many things. But in this instance, you're looking at the aspect of the body that is its impermanence, the momentariness, changing nature of the body that we haven't realized before. I was joking when I saw Venerable Pende. When she got back, I said, nothing's changed since you left. Everything's exactly the same. In fact, we haven't moved at all. Everything is permanent. We're in the same place as when you left. Kind of just joking about how everything feels so permanent. So we were taking it kind of like to an extreme. And we have that. We think our body's we're surprised when people die. You know, we are just grounded in the delusion of permanence. And so that's why, like, when things break and, you know, all these things happen, we're just like when some people die, I sometimes have had a feeling of like, I don't even know what to call this. It's kind of surreal. And I feel like I think it has something to do with that thing of permanence. And it's just kind of gotten like thrown off to a place that it makes my mind kind of funny. I remember that happening when my grandmother died. Probably denial, you know, a little bit. So, yeah, we haven't actually realized the impermanence of the body. We understand it intellectually, of course. All of us in our society here grew up with a lot of science, and so cause and effect and change and all that is like, we're used to that. But when it comes to relationships ending, people dying, our brand new car getting scratched, you know, how did that happen? So the meditating mind realizes the body's impermanence, and impermanence becomes that mind's apprehended object. So what the mind is doing then is it's penetrating impermanence. And then there was a footnote. Let's see what it says. So meditation on an object, its object is a content object. It says. Okay, so then, and then then His Holiness explains that meditation on emptiness is similar. It's in meditation on an object versus what they were calling meditation that transforms our subjective experience. That's how he's breaking it out now. So meditation on emptiness is similar. Emptiness is an object we haven't perceived previously. The meditating mind endeavors to understand and then see it more clearly. First, we obtain a rough idea of the lack of inherent existence. Then we apprehend it with a correct inferential cognizer. And finally, we remove the veil of conceptual appearance and cognize emptiness directly. So this is this whole notion of we need to understand something intellectually first, conceptually first, and then we penetrate that to the point where it's what we call the inferential realization. So you've actually got before that you have the correct notion, correct assumption, but you haven't really sunk it. You haven't got the reasonings like firm. You might even not have the reasonings. You might just have the idea right. But now with the inference, you've made this thing like rock solid. You couldn't be shaken from it. So, and then you have to keep working with that to the place where it's not a conceptual mind, but it's a direct experience. Okay, so that's one kind. That's the meditation on an object. So he gave the example of impermanence and emptiness. And now His Holiness is going to talk about the kind of meditation that's to transform our subjective experience, which he calls its object is an aspect object. So we mold the mind into a particular subjective experience. Compassion is not a separate object that we try to ascertain, like something out there, as it is in an object, in meditation on an object. Rather, we want to transform our mind into the subjective experience of compassion, which is what the sadhana is all about, right? When we do those, the thinking about the kindness of others and the four immeasurables and all these things, we're trying to make our mind into that. To do this, we to have the subjective experience of compassion, we contemplate sentient beings' kindness and their dukkha. A wish for them to be free from dukkha and its causes arises in us, whereby our subjective mental experience becomes compassion. Through familiarization with this experience over time, our compassion gains in strength until eventually it arises naturally whenever we see a sentient being. To cultivate faith, fortitude, and love, we similarly meditate to transform our subjective experience. So notice there that when they described this one on compassion, she said, His Holiness says, we contemplate sentient beings' kindness and their dukkha. The reason it's helpful to contemplate their kindness is because it makes the mind so open. You don't have to swim upstream to like if you're angry at someone, it's pretty hard to generate compassion for them. So if you can see everyone as a friend, or if you can have a positive feeling toward a person, it's actually a lot easier to generate compassion then. So that's why they put that in there, which is also why we meditate on equanimity, to get rid of the apathy we might have, or the attachment we might have, or the anger we might have towards someone, and level our mind out. So then it becomes easy because you have just like this feeling of affection. Let's see. When meditating on compassion, the observed object of our meditation is sentient beings who experience any of the three types of dukkha. So that's the observed object. Sentient beings. The aspect is the wish to free them from this dukkha. Compassion does not apprehend freedom from suffering. It is an aspiration and a heartfelt transforming experience. So the aspect is the wish to free them from this dukkha. And we said, may all beings be free from suffering and its causes. That's what we're saying there. Let's see, and then, so that's this. Now he's going to talk about a third kind of meditation, so he's changing the topic now. Another type of meditation involves visualization. For example, imagining a Buddhist deity in its mandala, which we kind of a little bit did in this practice, where we transformed all the beings into Buddhas and all the environments into Pure Lands. It's kind of that notion. So another type of meditation involves visualization. For example, imagining a Buddhist deity in its mandala or environment. Imagining being and acting like a Buddha encourages us to create the causes to become one. The Venerable always says, if you can't imagine it, you can't do it. Meditation sessions enable you to deepen your understanding and intensify your concentration on the meditation object. In the break times, when eating, walking, or engaging in daily life activities, do not forget the meditation topics. With the corner of your mind, recall what you have meditated on. So that's something that's like the instruction for us for this retreat. The break times are not, we can call them break times, but they're actually the times between the sessions. They're the between meditation times rather than break times. There's a difference, right? Break time is like off to La La Land. Between meditation sessions is I'm in between sessions, and you're going to try to carry through what you did in the session. And I wish you lots of luck with that. It's easier done some days than others, some moments than others. Because, you have these great things happen on the cushion and you walk out of the hall and it doesn't always go so well. But you come back, you just keep doing it and you familiarize your mind. That's what we're doing. Let's see. Then he says, you may wish to choose one lamrim topic each day, meditate on it in the morning, and view your experiences that day through the lens of that topic. One day, dwell on precious human life. Investigate it during meditation sessions and be aware of your fortune and opportunity it provides during the day. The next day, focus on death and impermanence. And as you go about your daily activities, recall that you and the people and environments around you are transient. In this way, avoid becoming attached to anything. The following day, focus on refuge and so on, cycling through the lamrim topics. In this way, integrate the meaning of each lamrim topic into your life day by day. Okay, we're just going to kind of finish this section. So that will be happening in a guided way at first and then on your own during this retreat. And there'll be more instruction coming. You may prefer to focus on one lamrim topic for a week or even a month before going on to the next. This enables you to go more deeply into each one. Alternatively, focus on the topic that seems most appropriate to help subdue the afflictions likely to arise that day, tailoring your practice to your needs each day. So it's not like a rote plan. It's like a individual prescription, and you learn to become like a doctor to your mind, and you need to have a different prescription some days than others, some months than others, some years than others. Regularly reading texts about your meditation topic and discussing it with Dharma friends are also helpful. This is like keeping a fire's embers glowing overnight so that the fire is easy to start the next morning. That's a nice image. Similarly, cultivate mindfulness of a lamrim topic during break times, invigorates and intensifies our meditation sessions and aids our mental development. But one thing you want to be wary of when you're doing a retreat is don't just speed read through books. For instance, I used to always use Shantideva during our retreats. And then one year I told Venerable Children, I made a commitment to her during the retreat that I was going to read so many pages a day or something, or a session. I can't even remember what I said. And she said, no, don't do it that way at all. Read 1 or 2 verses and contemplate that. And I had already kind of gone through the book at least 3 years. I'd read it at least 3 times. And that was the best ever, because I just took small amounts and stayed with them. And so when we're on retreat, you don't want to be reading a whole lot. You want to read less and contemplate it. Let's see. In this way, gradually develop your mind. I often advise my friends, including those doing long retreats, not to expect spiritual development to occur in only a few years. The key is to make effort daily so that over time, gradual change occurs. We progress towards our long-term goals of Buddhahood day by day. And then Venerable Children wrote some reflections here, and I'll just read them. Review the meaning of meditation on an object and meditation to transform our subjective experience and make examples of each. I think we could probably do that because I did that slowly enough. Review the meaning of stabilizing and analytical meditation. Make examples of how you could employ those in your practice. So